Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Adam Rourke stood in the kitchen, methodically checking his briefcase for the third time. Laptop, chargers, audit reports, emergency contacts. Everything had to be perfect for the Denver trip. 3 days of high-stakes logistics meetings that could make or break his promotion. "Daddy, can I come with you?" Dennis appeared in the doorway, clutching his worn stuffed elephant. At 6 years old, he still looked smaller than most kids his age, with Adam's dark hair, but none of his father's emotional walls. "Not this time, buddy." Adam knelt down to Dennis's eye level. "You get to stay here with Mommy and Grandma Lenore." Dennis's face crumpled. "But I don't want to. Grandma Lenore says I'm too loud." She doesn't mean it. The lie tasted bitter in Adam's mouth. Lenore Vaughn had made her feelings about Dennis crystal clear since the day he was born. Too needy, too sensitive, too different. Adam, he needs to stop this whining. Brielle swept into the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. She covered the mouthpiece. "I'm trying to schedule a client meeting." Adam studied his wife. Brielle had been beautiful when they married 7 years ago. Still was technically. Perfect blonde hair, expensive clothes, the kind of smile that opened doors in her real estate career. But motherhood had changed something in her eyes, made them cold. "He's just nervous about me leaving," Adam said. "He's too old for all this whining." Lenore's voice cut through the room like a blade. Brielle's mother appeared from the living room, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun that matched her pinched expression. Kids need discipline, not coddling. Adam felt his jaw clench. He'd grown up in the foster system, bounced between 7 homes before aging out 18. He knew what discipline without love looked like. Dennis is fine the way he is. Is he? Lenore's eyebrows rose. "When I was raising Brielle, children sat quietly and didn't interrupt adult conversations. They certainly didn't have meltdowns in grocery stores. He has sensory processing issues," Adam said through gritted teeth. "The doctors explained this." "Doctors?" Lenore waved a dismissive hand. "In my day, we called it poor parenting." Dennis pressed closer to Adam's leg. The boy's breathing had quickened a sign he was getting overwhelmed. Adam ran his fingers through his son's hair, the way that always calmed him down. "Daddy has to go to work," Adam said softly. "But I'll call you every night, okay? Promise." "Promise." Brielle ended her call with an exaggerated sigh. "Are you almost done?" "I have things to do today." Adam stood, fighting the familiar knot in his stomach. Every instinct told him not to leave Dennis. But the Denver audit was critical. Miss it, and he'd lose any chance at the regional manager position. The position that would finally give him enough money to get Dennis into the private school with the special needs program. That he pulled out Dennis's emergency kit from the kitchen drawer. EpiPen, emergency contact card, allergy medical bracelet. Remember, he's severely allergic to peanuts. Any exposure could kill him. "Yes, Adam. We know." Brielle rolled her eyes. "You've only told us 1,000 times." "I'm serious, Brielle. Check every label. Ask about ingredients. His EpiPen needs to stay with him at all times." "Got it." She grabbed the kit without looking at it. "Can you go now?" "Mom, and I have a spa appointment at 2. Adam's stomach dropped. "You're leaving him with a babysitter? Just for a few hours?" "Mrs. Patterson from next door. She's watched him before." Had she? Adam couldn't remember, but Dennis seemed to recognize the name. The boy's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Okay." Adam kissed Dennis's forehead, breathing in the smell of his son's shampoo. "Be good for Mommy and Grandma. I love you." "Love you too, Daddy." Adam grabbed his suitcase, pausing at the door. Dennis stood between Brielle and Lenore like a small island surrounded by icebergs. Something twisted in Adam's chest, but he pushed it down. 3 days. He could handle 3 days. The Hampton Inn in Denver felt like every other business hotel Adam had ever stayed in. Beige walls, generic artwork, the faint smell of industrial carpet cleaner. He'd finished the first day of audits, eaten a room service sandwich, and called Dennis at 8 o'clock sharp. "Hi, Daddy." Dennis's voice had sounded bright through the phone. "We had pizza for dinner, and I drew you a picture of an airplane." "That sounds great, buddy. Did you remember to take your allergy medicine?" "Uh-huh. Mommy reminded me." That had surprised Adam. Brielle usually forgot Dennis's daily antihistamine. Maybe she was trying harder. What are you doing tomorrow? Grandma Lenore says we might go to the park. If I'm good. The qualification had made Adam's jaw tighten, but he'd kept his voice light. You're always good. Sleep tight, okay? I love you. Love you too. Adam had hung up feeling better than he had all day. Maybe this trip will be fine. Maybe he was overthinking things. Now, at 11:47 p.m., his phone was ringing. The caller ID showed St. Clair Memorial Hospital. Adam's blood turned to ice. Hello, Mr. Rourke? This is Dr. Martinez at St. Clair Memorial Emergency Department. Your son Dennis is in critical condition. He fell down the stairs, and the words hit Adam like a physical blow. The room spun. What? How? Is he? We stabilized him, but sir, it's bad. You need to get here as soon as possible. I'm in Denver. I can drive 13 hours. Sir, I need you to understand. Your son suffered severe trauma from the fall, and he also went into anaphylactic shock. We're doing everything we can, but the line went quiet except for the sound of Adam's heart hammering against his ribs. Doctor, just please get here as soon as you can. Adam's hands shook as he dialed Brielle's number. It rang 4 times before she answered. What? Her voice was flat. Not worried. Not crying. Flat. Brielle, what happened? The hospital called. They said Dennis fell down the stairs. Yeah. She sounded almost bored. It was an accident. An accident? How does a 6-year-old fall downstairs hard enough to? Adam's voice cracked. They said he had an allergic reaction too. Did you give him his EpiPen? Silence. Brielle, did you give him the EpiPen? You shouldn't have left him with me. The words were like a knife between his ribs. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. You knew I didn't want to watch him alone. You're his mother, and you're his father. But you cared more about your stupid job than your son. Adam felt something break inside his chest. Put Lenore on the phone. What? Put your mother on the phone. Now. He heard muffled voices, then Lenore's clipped tones. Adam, what happened to my son? He wouldn't sit still. He ran around like a wild animal. We told him not to run near the stairs, but he wouldn't listen. Where was his EpiPen? The doctor said he had an allergic reaction. He got into something he shouldn't have. Children need to learn consequences. Adam's vision went red. What did he get into, Lenore? I don't know. Some cookie crumbs, maybe. He's always getting into things. There are no peanut products in that house. I checked every cabinet myself. Well, apparently you missed something. The line went dead. Adam stared at his phone, his whole body shaking. He threw clothes into his suitcase with numb fingers. 13 hours. He had to drive 13 hours to get to his dying SONAS. He ran to his rental car. One thought kept circling through his mind. Brielle had sounded guilty. Not sad. Not sorry. Guilty. The drive from Denver to Bend passed in a nightmare blur of gas stations, energy drinks, and phone calls to the hospital. Every hour, Adam called for updates. Every hour, the news got worse. His brain swelling has increased. We had to intubate him. Mr. Rourke, you need to prepare yourself. At 2:17 p.m., 13 and a half hours after he'd left Denver, Adam's phone rang one final time. Mr. Rourke? This is Dr. Martinez. I'm so sorry. Dennis passed away 20 minutes ago. We did everything we could. Adam pulled over on the side of Highway 97, 5 miles from Bend, and threw up in the tall grass. His son was dead. His beautiful, sensitive, artistic little boy was gone. When he walked into St. Clair Memorial 40 minutes later, his eyes were dry. The tears would come later, maybe. Right now, he felt nothing but cold, calculating fury. Doctor Martinez was a tired-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. She led Adam to a family conference room that smelled like disinfectant and artificial air freshener. I need to know exactly what happened, Adam said. Doctor Martinez consulted her tablet. Dennis arrived at 11:15 p.m. via ambulance. He was unconscious with signs of severe head trauma and anaphylactic shock. His breathing was compromised, heart rate irregular. Anaphylactic shock from what? Blood tests showed significant levels of peanut proteins in his system. He also had hives on his arms and face consistent with allergic exposure. Adam's hands clenched into fists. His EpiPen. Was it used? Dr. Martinez shook her head. No. The paramedics said they found it in his backpack and used. If it had been administered immediately after exposure, he might have survived the allergic reaction. But combined with the fall trauma, how did he fall? According to the adults present, he was running and tripped at the top of the stairs. Fell approximately 12 steps to the bottom. Adam closed his eyes. Dennis never ran in the house. The boy was too cautious, too aware of his own clumsiness. Who was there when it happened? His mother and grandmother. They're the ones who called 911. I want to see him. Dennis looked smaller than ever on the hospital bed. His dark hair was matted with dried blood. His face was peaceful, like he was sleeping. Adam touched his son's cold hand and felt the last piece of his heart shatter. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "Daddy should have been here." When Adam finally left the hospital, his phone had 17 missed calls from Brielle. He didn't call her back. Instead, he drove to the house he'd shared with his wife and son for 4 years. Brielle's car was in the driveway. So was Lenore's silver Mercedes. Adam let himself in through the front door and stopped at the bottom of the staircase. The baby gate was gone. Adam had installed that gate when Dennis was 2 years old, back when he'd first started climbing. It was a permanent fixture, bolted into the wall studs. Dennis had learned to open and close it carefully. He never climbed over it, never left it open. Now there was nothing but empty holes in the drywall where the bolts had been. "Adam." Brielle appeared at the top of the stairs. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy. But her eyes were calculating, not grief-stricken. "Where's the baby gate?" "What?" "The safety gate. It was here when I left." "Where is it?" Brielle's mouth opened and closed like a fish. We took it down. Dennis was too old for it." "When?" "I don't remember. Yesterday, maybe." Adam climbed the stairs slowly. At the top, he could see scuff marks on the wall where the gate had been. Fresh ones. The paint was still bright white underneath where the mounting brackets had protected it. "You took it down yesterday," he said quietly. "Yes." The same day Dennis fell down these stairs. Brielle's face went white. It was a coincidence. Adam walked past her to Dennis's room. Everything looked normal at first glance. Bed neatly made, toys organized on shelves, art supplies arranged on the small desk. But when Adam opened the closet, he found Dennis's backpack. The EpiPen was still inside, right where Adam had put it 3 days ago. The emergency card was there too, along with a pack of Dennis's safe crackers and a juice box. Why had Dennis been carrying his backpack? He only used it for school or overnight trips. "Brielle." Adam's voice was deadly calm. "Why did Dennis have his backpack?" No answer. Adam turned around. Brielle stood in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. "We were going to take him somewhere," she said finally. "Where?" "Just out. For a drive." "With his emergency kit?" "Yes." At 11 o'clock at night. Brielle's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Adam felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. What wasn't supposed to happen like this? But Brielle was already running down the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood. A door slammed. Adam heard her car start in the driveway, tires squealing as she backed out. That Lenore's Mercedes was still there. Adam found her in the kitchen, methodically washing dishes that were already clean. She didn't look up when he entered. "Lenore, I'm sorry for your loss," she said without emotion. "Dennis was a difficult child, but he didn't deserve to die." "Tell me what happened." "I already told you. He was running. He fell." Adam studied her profile. Lenore Vaughn had been controlling people through guilt and manipulation for 63 years. She was good at it, but she was also nervous. He could see it in the tight line of her shoulders, the way she scrubbed the same plate over and over. "Where did the peanuts come from?" "I don't know. I check every food item in this house. There were no peanut products anywhere. Children get into things." "What things, Lenore?" She finally turned to face him. Her pale blue eyes were hard as ice. "Your son was disturbed, Adam. All that sensitivity training and therapy nonsense. In my day, children learned to behave or they face consequences. Consequences like what? Like learning that the world doesn't revolve around their special needs." Adam stepped closer. "Did you give him something with peanuts in it?" "Of course not. I'm not a monster." "Then where did it come from?" Lenore dried her hands on a kitchen towel with precise movements. Perhaps you should ask yourself why your son was so out of control that he ran down a flight of stairs. Perhaps you should ask yourself what kind of father leaves a special needs child with people who don't want him there. The words hit their target. Adam felt the familiar weight of guilt, the same guilt that had followed him through every foster home. Never good enough, never wanted, always someone else's burden. But this time, the guilt was accompanied by something else. Something cold and calculating that had kept him alive through 18 years of foster care and 7 years of marriage to a woman who resented their son. "You're right," Adam said quietly. "I should have protected him better." Lenore smiled, thinking she'd won. "Well, at least you can admit your mistakes." "Yes," Adam said. "I can." The funeral was held on a gray Tuesday morning at Bend Community Chapel. Adam had wanted something small, intimate. Dennis would have hated a big crowd. But Lenore had insisted on announcing it in the newspaper, and nearly 200 people showed up. Adam sat in the front row, wearing his only black suit, and watched his wife perform. Because that's what it was, a performance. Brielle had positioned herself where everyone could see her, dabbing at her eyes with tissues, accepting hugs from neighbors who barely knew Dennis. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Adam made in a week, and her makeup was camera-ready. "She's holding up so well," someone whispered behind him. "Such a strong mother." Adam's hands clenched in his lap. Lenore sat beside Brielle, playing the role of grieving grandmother with practiced ease. She spoke in hushed tones about tragic accidents and God's plan, and how Dennis was finally at peace. The words made Adam's skin crawl. "Mr. Rourke?" Adam turned. A woman with curly brown hair and tired eyes stood beside his pew. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, the kind of practical outfit that suggested she'd come straight from work. "I'm Nova Ellison. I was one of Dennis's nurses at the pediatric clinic." Adam remembered her now. Nova had been the one who'd made Dennis laugh during his allergy testing last year. She'd been patient when he got overwhelmed, gentle when he cried during blood draws. "Thank you for coming," Adam said. Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Adam glanced around the chapel. Brielle was still accepting condolences from a line of mourners. Lenore was speaking with the pastor about the service order. Neither of them had looked in his direction since the service began. Of course, they walked outside to the chapel's small garden. The October air was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and rain. Nova wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she said, "but I can't stop thinking about it." "Tell me what?" "Dennis came to the clinic about 6 months ago. You brought him in for his regular checkup, remember? But before that, he'd been there twice with your wife." Adam's pulse quickened. "For what?" "The first time, she said he'd fallen off his bike. He had bruises on his arms and back. I asked him what happened, and he said he couldn't remember. Kids fall all the time." "I know, but the bruises were unusual. They looked more like grip marks than fall injuries. I documented it and sent a report to Child Protective Services." Adam felt the world tilt. "You reported us?" "I had to. It's mandatory reporting." But CPS dismissed it. They said Dennis was just clumsy, and there was no other evidence of abuse. "What was the second visit for?" Nova looked uncomfortable. "He had a rash, all over his chest and arms. Your wife said it was eczema, but it looked more like an allergic reaction to me. I suggested allergy testing, but she refused. Said you couldn't afford it." That was a lie. Adam's insurance covered allergy testing. They'd done the full panel 2 months later, when Adam took Dennis himself. "Did you ever see Dennis with my mother-in-law?" Adam asked. "Once. She came with your wife for the second visit. She seemed impatient, kept checking her watch, making comments about Dennis being difficult." Adam closed his eyes. 6 months ago, Brielle had started leaving Dennis with Lenore more often. Said she needed time to focus on her real estate career. Adam had thought it was good for Dennis to spend time with his grandmother. He'd been wrong about a lot of things. "Nova." Adam opened his eyes. "Do you think someone was hurting my son?" Nova's face was full of compassion and professional caution. "I think Dennis was a sweet boy who deserved better than what happened to him. And I think you loved him very much." It wasn't a direct answer, but it was enough. "Thank you," Adam said, "for caring about him. He drew me a picture once. After his allergy testing. It was a rainbow with a little boy underneath it, smiling. He said the boy was happy because the rainbow protected him from the storm. Adam's throat closed up. Dennis had always drawn rainbows when he was scared. It was his way of imagining safety. I kept the picture, Nova said softly. If you'd like to have it. Adam nodded, not trusting his voice. When they returned to the chapel, the service was ending. Brielle stood at the altar, speaking about Dennis's bright spirit and artistic soul to an audience of people who'd barely known him. Adam didn't hear the words. He was too busy watching her face, looking for cracks in the performance. And for the first time since Dennis died, he saw them. The way her eyes darted toward the exits every few minutes. The way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. The way she avoided eye contact with the pediatric nurse standing in the back of the chapel. Brielle was afraid. 2 weeks after the funeral, Adam hired a lawyer. Not for a wrongful death suit, not yet. He hired Patricia Wells, a trust and estate attorney, to help him understand Dennis's financial situation. It was something he should have looked into years ago, but he'd been too busy working, too busy trying to keep his marriage together, too busy pretending everything was fine. Patricia's office was in downtown Bend, in a converted Victorian house with creaky floors and tall windows. She was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that came from 40 years of dealing with family money disputes. Your son had a trust fund, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Established by your father, Robert Rourke, in 2019. Adam stared at the papers. His father's name on official letterhead made his stomach churn. Robert Rourke had walked out when Adam was 3 years old. No letters, no visits, no child support. Adam had spent his entire childhood wondering what he'd done wrong. I never knew my father set up a trust. It's not uncommon for estranged parents to try to make amends through estate planning. Easier than facing their children directly. Adam scanned the documents. The language was dense, full of legal terms he didn't understand. But the numbers were clear enough. $180,000. Dennis was the sole beneficiary, Patricia explained. The funds were set to be released when he turned 18. But there's a clause here that concerns me. She pointed to a paragraph near the bottom of the second page. If the beneficiary dies before reaching majority age, the funds transfer to his legal guardian. Adam read the words twice before they sank in. His legal guardian. Yes. And according to this recent petition, Patricia pulled out another document. Your wife filed for sole guardianship 3 days before Dennis died. The room went silent, except for the tick of an antique clock on Patricia's desk. Adam stared at the dates on the guardianship petition. Filed on Thursday. Dennis died on Sunday. Why would she need sole guardianship? Adam asked. We were both his parents. Joint custody is automatic for married parents. Sole guardianship requires a court petition and specific justification. Usually it's filed when one parent is deemed unfit. Unfit. Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. The petition cites your work travel schedule and your, quote, emotional unavailability and history of childhood trauma that makes him unsuitable as a primary caregiver, unquote. Adam felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. She used my foster care background against me. It appears so. The petition was approved the day before Dennis died. So now she inherits the money. She would, yes, if Dennis's death is ruled accidental. Adam looked up sharply. If trust funds like this often include clauses about criminal activity. If a guardian is found to have caused the beneficiary's death through negligence or intent, they forfeit any claim to the funds. Adam stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. She killed him for money. Mr. Rourke, I can't advise you to make accusations like that without proof. The timing isn't proof enough. Not in court. You need evidence of intent or negligence. And even then, proving a murder case is extremely difficult. Adam paced to the window, staring down at the street below. Tourists walked past with coffee cups and shopping bags, going about their normal lives while his world burned down around him. What would you do? He asked quietly. If it were your child. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I'd make sure the truth came out. Whatever that truth might be. Adam turned back to her. Al, hire a private investigator. Look into your wife's financial records, her communications, her whereabouts leading up to Dennis's death. If there's evidence of planning or premeditation, you'll find it there. And if I find evidence, then you take it to the police. And you let the justice system do its job. Adam nodded. But even as he shook Patricia's hand and left her office, he knew the justice system wouldn't be enough. Not for what they'd done to Dennis. Some things required a more personal touch. Adam spent 2 days learning how to be a detective. He watched YouTube videos about tracking cell phones, bought a GPS device from an electronics store, and figured out how to access the shared cloud account that Brielle had forgotten to remove him from. Her location history told an interesting story. For the past 6 months, Brielle had been visiting a bar called the Rusty Anchor 3 to 4 times a week. Always at night. Always for several hours. The visits had become more frequent in the weeks leading up to Dennis's death, that on Thursday night, the night before Dennis died, she'd been there from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Adam drove to the Rusty Anchor on a Wednesday evening, when the after-work crowd would be thick enough to provide cover. The bar was a dive, the kind of place with peanut shells on the floor and neon beer signs in the windows. Not Brielle's usual scene, that he ordered a beer and settled into a corner booth where he could watch the bar staff. 3 bartenders worked the evening shift. An older woman with bleached hair, a college-age kid with too many piercings, and a man in his late 20s with tattooed arms and the kind of cocky smile that suggested he knew exactly how good-looking he was. Adam watched the tattooed bartender for 20 minutes before he was sure. The way he moved, the way he flirted with female customers, the way he handled money, everything about him screamed trouble. His name tag read Reese. Adam finished his beer and walked to the bar during a lull in the crowd. "Busy night," he said. Reese looked him up and down, taking in the expensive button-down shirt and khakis. "You lost, man. There's a wine bar down the street that might be more your speed. Actually, I'm looking for an investment opportunity. I heard this place might be for sale." That got Reese's attention. "Yeah? Who told you that?" "Friend or friend. Said the owner was looking to retire." Adam pulled out his wallet, making sure Reese saw the thick stack of cash inside. "I'm interested in buying existing businesses rather than starting from scratch." "Huh?" Reese's eyes stayed on the wallet. "I could probably put you in touch with the owner. For finder's fee." Adam smiled. "How much of a finder's fee?" "Depends on the deal. But I know this place inside and out. Been working here 3 years. Could help with the transition, you know. That's valuable. What's your name?" "Reese Brantley." He extended a tattooed hand. "And you are?" "Adam." He used his middle name. "Adam Clark." They shook hands. Reese's grip was firm, confident. The grip of a man who'd never been told no. "You free to talk sometime this week?" Adam asked. "I'd like to hear your thoughts on the business potential here." "Sure, man. I get off at 2 on Friday. We could grab coffee somewhere." "Perfect. How about that place on Galveston, next to the bank?" "Sounds good." Adam left his fake business card. He'd printed them at a FedEx office that afternoon and walked out of the bar with his heart pounding. It was risky, but he needed to know more about Reese Brantley. And based on the way Reese had looked at that cash, he had a feeling the bartender would be very eager to meet. Friday afternoon, Adam sat in the coffee shop 20 minutes early, watching the door. Reese showed up exactly on time, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off his muscular build. "Adam, right?" Reese slid into the opposite chair. "Good to see you again. Thanks for meeting me. Can I buy you a drink?" "Coffee's fine." Adam got them both coffee and settled back into his seat. "So tell me about the Rusty Anchor. What kind of clientele do you serve?" "Locals, mostly. Working class crowd during the week, party scene on weekends. We get some of the real estate crowd too. They come in after closing big deals." "Real estate crowd?" "Yeah, you know, agents, brokers. There's this one woman, comes in all the time. Drives a BMW, always dressed like she's going to some fancy party. Tips well." Adam kept his expression neutral. "Sounds like good customers." "She is. Brielle something. Real friendly, if you know what I mean." The words hit Adam like a slap, but he forced himself to smile. "Friendly customers are good for business." "Yeah, she's real. Appreciative of good service." Reese's grin was predatory. "Been coming in for months now. Always orders the same thing, vodka tonic, extra lime." Adam filed that information away. Brielle had never mentioned drinking vodka tonics. At home, she drank wine. Expensive wine that she claimed was necessary for her image. "Anyway," Reese continued, "the bar does pretty good business, but I think it could do better with the right management. Someone with vision, you know? They talked for another hour about inventory, staffing, and profit margins. Reese was smarter than Adam had expected, but also desperate. He mentioned his student loans, his car payments, his ex-girlfriend who'd cleaned out his bank account. By the end of the conversation, Adam had learned 3 important things. Reese was broke, he was sleeping with Brielle, and he thought he was smarter than everyone around him. "I'll need to run some numbers," Adam said as they prepared to leave. "But I'm definitely interested. Can I call you next week?" "Absolutely." Reese handed him a napkin with a phone number scrawled on it. "I'm usually free after 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., the same time Brielle usually claimed she was showing houses to serious buyers. Adam shook Reese's hand and watched him walk away. Then he sat back down at the coffee shop and called Patricia Wells. "I need that private investigator," he said when she answered. "And I need him to start immediately." The private investigator's name was Mike Chun, and he looked exactly like what Adam had expected. Middle-aged, unremarkable, the kind of man who could blend into any crowd. They met at a diner outside of town, where Mike spread photographs across the sticky table like he was dealing cards. "Your wife's been busy," Mike said, pointing to a picture of Brielle entering the Rusty Anchor. "She's been seeing the bartender for at least 4 months. Probably longer." Adam studied the photos. Brielle and Reese holding hands in a parking lot. Brielle and Reese kissing against the side of her BMW. Brielle and Reese entering a motel room together. "Any financial connections?" Adam asked. "Not directly, but here's where it gets interesting." Mike pulled out a bank statement. 3 weeks ago, your wife applied for a credit line against your house. $50,000. Adam's blood went cold. "I never signed anything." "She forged your signature. I compared it to documents you've signed recently. It's a good forgery, but not perfect. A handwriting expert would catch it." "What did she do with the money?" "Haven't spent it yet. It's sitting in a separate account at a different bank." But here's the thing, Reese Brantley deposited $5,000 in cash the day after your son died. Adam felt the familiar rage building in his chest. She paid him. Looks like it. But paying him for what? That's the question. Mike had more. Financial records showing Brielle's growing desperation over the past year. Missed mortgage payments. Maxed out credit cards. A real estate career that was failing despite her perfect image. She needed money, Mike concluded, and she needed it fast. That evening, Adam put his new plan into motion. He called Lenore and suggested they have lunch to discuss Dennis's memorial service. She agreed, probably thinking she could manipulate him into something that would benefit her image. They met at an upscale restaurant in downtown Bend, the kind of place where Lenore felt comfortable among her social circle. Adam waited until she'd ordered her usual salmon salad, no dressing, sparkling water before dropping his bomb. "I found out about Dennis's trust fund," he said casually, cutting into his steak that Lenore's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Trust fund, the one for my father. $180,000. Did you know about it?" "Of course not. How would I know about that?" But her voice was too high, too careful. Adam had spent 7 years learning to read the women in his family. Lenore was lying. "It's interesting timing," Adam continued. Brielle filed for sole guardianship just 3 days before Dennis died. Now she inherits all that money. Lenore set down her fork. "Adam, I don't like what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm just sharing information." He took a sip of his coffee. Of course, if there was any evidence that Dennis's death wasn't accidental, Brielle would lose the inheritance. The trust has specific clauses about criminal activity. Dennis's death was a tragic accident. I'm sure it was. But you know how suspicious people can be, especially when there's money involved. Adam leaned forward. "If I were you, I'd make sure my story stayed consistent. The police might ask more questions." Lenore's face had gone pale under her carefully applied makeup. "What do you mean?" "Just that grief makes people remember things differently sometimes. Details change. Timelines get confused." Adam smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'd hate for you or Brielle to accidentally say something that contradicted the official report." He left Lenore sitting at the table, her salmon untouched, her hands shaking as she reached for her water glass. That night, Adam sat in his car outside Lenore's house with a listening device he'd bought online. It was illegal, probably inadmissible in court, but he didn't care. He needed to know what they were saying when they thought no one was listening 9:47 p.m., Brielle's BMW pulled into the driveway. Adam activated the recording device and waited. 20 minutes later, he heard Lenore's voice through the static. "If anyone finds out, we're both screwed." Brielle's response was muffled, but Adam caught the key words. "Told him not to eat the whole cookie," Lenore again. "You're the one who fed it to him. You said a little bit wouldn't hurt. I didn't know he'd eat the whole thing. He was supposed to just taste it. Well, congratulations. Now we're murderers." The recording device captured every word in crystal clear digital quality. Adam sat in his car, listening to his wife and mother-in-law argue about how they'd killed his son, and felt something cold and final settle in his chest that he'd found his evidence. Now he just had to decide what to do with it. Detective Shane Alcott had the kind of face that had seen everything, weathered, skeptical, with eyes that missed nothing. At 43, he'd been working homicide for 15 years, and Adam could tell within the first 5 minutes that Alcott wasn't easily fooled. They sat across from each other in a small interview room at the Bend Police Department. Adam had brought everything: the financial records, the timeline, the photos from the private investigator, and most importantly, the digital recording of Brielle and Lenore's conversation. "Play it again," Alcott said after listening to the recording twice. Adam hit play on his phone. Lenore's voice filled the room. "You're the one who fed it to him. You said a little bit wouldn't hurt." Brielle's panicked response: "I didn't know he'd eat the whole thing." Alcott took notes in a small black notebook, his handwriting precise and careful. "How'd you get this recording?" "I bugged my mother-in-law's car. You know that's illegal." "Yes. Could get thrown out of court." "I know." Alcott studied Adam's face. "Why should I believe you didn't fake this?" "Because I'm not that smart," Adam said simply. "And because you can verify everything else I've shown you. The trust fund, the guardianship petition, the affair. It all happened exactly the way I said. Let's say I believe you. What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Investigate my son's death as a homicide." Alcott flipped through the medical examiner's report. "Kid died from head trauma and anaphylactic shock. Could still be accidental." "Could be. But now you know it probably wasn't." They sat in silence for a moment. Adam could practically hear the gears turning in Alcott's head, weighing evidence against procedure, truth against bureaucracy. "I used to be a foster kid," Alcott said finally. Adam looked up surprised. 7 different homes between ages 4 and 16. Know what I learned in those homes? What? That some people will do anything for money. And that kids are always the ones who pay the price. Alcott closed his notebook. "I'll look into it. Unofficially at first. If I find enough evidence to support a warrant, we'll move forward officially." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This could all blow up in both our faces." Adam left the police station feeling lighter than he had since Dennis died. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't carrying the weight of the truth alone, but he wasn't done. While Alcott investigated through official channels, Adam had his own plans. That afternoon, he called his friend Marcus Webb, a civil rights attorney who owed Adam a favor from their college days. Without mentioning names or specific details, Adam asked Marcus to forward some information to the appropriate authorities. Child Protective Services received an anonymous tip about a potential child death involving negligence and financial motivation. The State Child Welfare Office received copies of Dennis's medical records, and the trust fund documentation. 2 local reporters received manila envelopes containing Brielle's financial records and photos of her with Reese. The BY Wednesday morning. The story had leaked. The headline in the Bend Daily News read, "Local mother inherits after son's mysterious death following allergy incident." The article was carefully worded to avoid libel charges, but the implications were clear. Within hours, it had been picked up by regional news outlets. By evening, it was trending on social media. Adam sat in his empty house, reading the comments on Facebook and Twitter. Most people were outraged. Some defended Brielle, saying she was being victimized by rumor and speculation. But the overall tide was turning against her. His phone rang at 8:30 p.m. Brielle's number. "Adam." Her voice was shaking. "We need to talk." "Do we?" "People are saying terrible things. They're calling me a murderer." "Are you?" Silence. "Adam, please. You have to help me. Tell them it was an accident." "Was it?" "Of course it was. How can you ask me that?" Adam closed his eyes. Even now, Even with everything he knew, part of him wanted to believe her. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of trying to make it work, 7 years of telling himself that Brielle loved Dennis in her own way. "I know about the trust fund," he said quietly. Another silence. "I know about Reese. I know about the guardianship petition. I know you fed Dennis something with peanuts in it. Adam, I know you killed our son for money." The line went dead. The media attention exploded over the next week. What started as a local news story became a national obsession. Nancy Grace picked it up. Reddit created a dedicated discussion thread. True crime podcasters began dissecting every detail of Dennis's death. Brielle and Lenore became prisoners in their own homes. Protesters gathered outside Lenore's real estate office with signs reading "Justice for Dennis" and "Children are not paychecks." Someone spray-painted "Murderer" across Brielle's BMW windshield. Adam watched it all from his living room, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no relief. Just cold, patient calculation. Detective Alcott called on Thursday morning. "We got the warrant." "For what?" "Everything. Bank records, phone records, digital devices, search of both residences. Judge was very interested in your recording and the financial timeline." "When?" "This afternoon. I'll call you when we're done." The search lasted 6 hours. Adam drove past Lenore's house twice and saw police cars in the driveway, officers carrying boxes of evidence to unmarked vans. Neighbors stood on their porches, watching the spectacle with undisguised fascination. At 7 p.m., Alcott called back. "We found some interesting things," he said. "Can you come to the station?" This time, they met in a larger conference room. Alcott had spread evidence across a long table like pieces of a puzzle. "Your mother-in-law tried to destroy some evidence, but she's not very good at it." He pointed to a plastic bag containing what looked like cookie crumbs. "Found these in her kitchen trash, wrapped in a paper towel and buried under coffee grounds. Cookies, peanut butter cookies, from Sweetland Bakery downtown. We also found this." He held up a credit card receipt. "Your mother-in-law bought 2 dozen peanut butter cookies 2 days before Dennis died. Paid cash, but they keep receipts for inventory." Adam stared at the evidence. "She bought them specially. Gets better. We found digital evidence on your wife's laptop. She Googled peanut allergy symptoms and how much peanut to cause allergic reaction 3 days before Dennis died." The room felt cold. Adam pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders. "She researched how to poison him. Looks like it. But here's the smoking gun." Alcott pulled out a cell phone. "Text messages between your wife and the bartender. Want to hear them?" Adam nodded. Alcott read from a printed transcript. "Brielle to Reese, Sunday morning. It's done. Problem solved. Reese to Brielle. You sure nobody will find out? Brielle to Reese. Who's going to investigate a clumsy kid falling downstairs?" Adam's vision went red around the edges. "They planned it. Sure looks like it. We're bringing them both in for questioning tomorrow morning." "Reese too. What about charges?" "Depends on what they say. Could be anything from negligent homicide to first-degree murder." Adam left the police station and drove to the cemetery where Dennis was buried. The headstone was simple, just his name, dates, and the words "beloved son." Adam had wanted to add "taken too soon," but couldn't bring himself to engrave a lie. Dennis hadn't been taken. He'd been murdered. "I'm sorry, buddy," Adam whispered to the headstone. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but I promise they're going to pay for what they did." The October wind was cold against his face, but Adam didn't feel it. He felt nothing but the cold fire of purpose that had kept him going for the past month. Tomorrow, justice would begin. Reese Brantley broke first. Adam wasn't surprised. 36 hours in a police interview room with Detective Alcott asking the same questions over and over would break anyone, but especially someone like Reese, cocky, impulsive, and fundamentally selfish. Alcott called Adam at home Wednesday evening. "Your bartender friend decided to cooperate." "What did he say?" "That he told them not to do it. That it was all Brielle and Lenore's idea. That he never touched the kid." Adam felt his jaw clench. "But he took money from them. $5,000, yeah. Says Brielle told him it was payment for keeping quiet about their affair. He claims he didn't know about the murder plot until after it happened. Do you believe him?" "Doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is that he's willing to testify against them." and his story matches the evidence. According to Reese's statement, Brielle had been planning Dennis's death for weeks. She confided in her mother about the trust fund, about her financial desperation, about her resentment toward Dennis and Adam. Lenore had been the one to suggest the peanut allergy angle. It would look accidental, especially with Dennis's history of getting into things he shouldn't. They planned it for a weekend when Adam would be out of town. Lenore bought the cookies and crumbled them into regular chocolate chip cookies, making them look harmless. When Dennis asked for a snack Sunday evening, Brielle gave him one. She told Reese that Dennis was supposed to just taste it and get a mild reaction, Alcott said. Something that would require a hospital visit but not be life-threatening. Then they claim he'd gotten into something by accident. But Dennis ate the whole cookie. Kid was 6 years old, and it tasted like chocolate chip. Of course, he ate the whole thing. The plan had gone wrong immediately. Dennis had a massive allergic reaction within minutes. Instead of using his EpiPen, Brielle had panicked. Lenore had yelled at them both. In the chaos, Dennis had tried to run to his room to get his inhaler. That's when he fell down the stairs. Alcott continued. Reese says Brielle told him the kid was wheezing so bad he couldn't see straight. Lost his balance at the top of the stairs. Where was his EpiPen? In his backpack, in his room. They'd moved it there earlier because they didn't want him to have it when the reaction started. Wanted to control how bad it got. Adam closed his eyes, picturing his son's final moments. Struggling to breathe, trying to get to his medicine, falling down 13 steps to the hardwood floor below. By the time they called 911, it was too late, Alcott said. Kid was unconscious, barely breathing. Reese says Brielle was hysterical, screaming that it wasn't supposed to happen like that. What about Lenore? Cool as ice, according to Reese. Started coaching Brielle on what to tell the paramedics before they even got there. Adam felt the familiar cold rage settling in his chest. When are you arresting them? Tomorrow morning. Both of them, same time. We don't want them coordinating their stories any more than they already have. What charges? First-degree murder for Brielle. She planned it. She executed it. She had financial motive. Conspiracy to commit murder for Lenore. We might be able to get murder charges for her too, depending on how the DA feels about it. After Alcott hung up, Adam sat in his empty house and felt something he hadn't felt since Dennis died. A small, cold satisfaction. Not happiness. He doubted he'd ever feel truly happy again, but satisfaction that his son's killers would finally face consequences. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, the good stuff Dennis had given him for Father's Day, and raised a glass toward the kitchen wall, where Dennis's latest artwork still hung. They're going to pay, buddy, he said to the drawing of a rainbow. I promise you that. The trial lasted 3 weeks and made national news. Court TV carried it live. Social media exploded with hashtags like hashtag Justice for Dennis and hashtag Trust Fund Murder. Adam attended every day, sitting in the front row directly behind the prosecutor's table, making sure Brielle and Lenore could see him. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They presented the financial timeline, the internet searches, the text messages, the forensic evidence from the cookies. Dr. Martinez testified about Dennis's final hours, describing in clinical detail how anaphylactic shock had compromised his breathing before the fall finished, what the allergic reaction had started. Reese took the stand on day 12, dressed in an ill-fitting suit and looking like he wanted to disappear. Under oath, he repeated his statement about Brielle's plan, about the payments, about the panic when everything went wrong. She kept saying it wasn't supposed to happen like that, he testified, that Dennis was just supposed to get a little sick, not die. Brielle's defense attorney tried to paint Reese as an unreliable witness motivated by plea deal, but the evidence backed up his story. Phone records, financial records, even security footage from the bakery showing Lenore buying the peanut butter cookies. That Lenore's attorney took a different approach, arguing that she'd been manipulated by her daughter, that she'd never intended for Dennis to die. But the prosecution had recordings of Lenore's own words. He wouldn't sit still. He ran. We told him not to. The defense called character witnesses, neighbors who described Brielle as a loving mother and Lenore as a pillar of the community. But their testimony rang hollow against the mountain of evidence showing premeditation and financial motive. That on day 15, Adam took the stand. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with reporters, true crime enthusiasts, and local residents who'd followed the case obsessively. Adam wore his best suit, the black one from Dennis's funeral, and answered every question in a clear, steady voice. The prosecutor asked him to describe Dennis. Adam talked about his son's artwork, his love of rainbows, his sensitivity to loud noises. He talked about the bedtime stories, the Saturday morning pancakes, the way Dennis would crawl into Adam's lap when thunderstorms scared him. Dennis was not a difficult child, Adam said, looking directly at Lenore. He was a sensitive child who needed patience and understanding. Things his grandmother was apparently incapable of providing. The defense attorney objected, but the damage was done. When the prosecutor asked Adam to read his victim impact statement, the courtroom fell silent. "You didn't just kill my son," Adam read, his voice steady and cold. "You killed the only thing I ever loved purely. You killed him for money that you'll never see, money that will never bring back what you destroyed." He looked up from the paper, meeting Brielle's eyes for the first time since Dennis's death. "I will carry the weight of his loss for the rest of my life. So will you. But I'll carry it with the knowledge that I loved him completely, while you'll carry it knowing that you murdered an innocent child for your own selfish gain." The jury deliberated for 4 hours on Lenore's charges, guilty on all counts. Brielle had taken a plea deal the week before trial, avoiding the possibility of a life sentence by pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter and conspiracy charges. Lenore was sentenced to 15 years in state prison with no possibility of parole. At 63, she would likely die behind bars. Brielle was sentenced to 10 years in state prison with no possibility of parole. She would serve every day of those 10 years, but she would still be young enough to rebuild her life when she got out a fact that made Adam's jaw clench with barely contained rage. Yes, the bailiff led them away in handcuffs. Neither woman looked at Adam, but he watched them go, memorizing their faces, their defeat, their complete and total fall from grace. That IT still didn't bring Dennis back. Nothing would ever bring Dennis back, but it was a start point. 6 months after the trial ended, Adam stood in the lobby of a renovated office building in downtown Bend, looking up at the sign that read Dennis Rourke Foundation for Allergy Education and Emergency Response. The foundation had been his idea, funded partially by Dennis's trust fund and partially by donations that had poured in from around the country after the trial. People had been outraged by Dennis's story, moved by the senseless loss of a child who should have been protected by the people who claimed to love him. The foundation's mission was simple: make sure no other child died from a preventable allergic reaction due to ignorance, negligence, or malice. They provided emergency response training to schools, funded allergy testing for low-income families, and advocated for stricter laws around child endangerment. Mr. Rourke, Nova Ellison, appeared at his elbow, carrying a coffee and a manila folder. "The school district coordinator is here for the meeting." Adam nodded. Nova had joined the foundation as its program director 3 months ago, bringing her medical expertise and her genuine care for children's welfare. Her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, often came to the office after school, doing homework in the corner while the adults planned ways to save other kids that IT wasn't healing. Exactly. Adam didn't think he would ever truly heal from losing Dennis, but it was purpose. It was a way to channel his rage and grief into something that might prevent another family from going through what he'd experienced. "How many schools are we working with now?" Adam asked as they walked toward the conference room. 15 in Central Oregon, 12 in the Portland metro area. And we just got approval to expand into Washington State. The work was exhausting and emotionally draining. Every day brought new stories of children at risk, parents who didn't understand the severity of allergies, schools that were unprepared for medical emergencies. But it also brought victories, kids whose lives were saved by properly trained teachers, families who learned to manage severe allergies safely, policies that protected vulnerable children. That evening, Adam locked up the foundation office and walked to his car in the parking garage. The building was quiet. Most of the other businesses closed for the day. As he reached his car, he noticed someone had left flowers on his windshield, a small bouquet of wildflowers with a note attached. "Thank you for Dennis's foundation. You saved my daughter's life." A grateful mother. Adam stood in the empty parking garage, holding the flowers and reading the note, and felt something crack inside his chest. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the possibility of healing someday. That he drove home to the small apartment he'd rented after selling the house he'd shared with Brielle. The walls were covered with Dennis's artwork, the bright rainbows and smiling stick figures that had once decorated his bedroom. In the corner sat a small easel where Emma sometimes painted when she visited, adding her own colorful creations to Dennis's collection. Adam poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat on the couch, looking at his son's pictures. 6 months ago, he'd been consumed with revenge, driven by cold fury and the need for justice. The fury was still there, it would always be there. But it was tempered now by something else. Purpose. His phone buzzed with a text from Nova. Emma wants to know if you'll come to her school's art show next week. She painted something really cool that she wants to show you. Adam typed back, wouldn't miss it. He set down his phone and picked up the latest drawing Emma had made at the office, a rainbow stretching across a blue sky, with 2 little boys standing underneath it, both smiling. One had dark hair like Dennis. One had brown hair like Emma. In Emma's 6-year-old handwriting at the bottom, it said, "Friends in heaven and on earth." Adam studied the picture for a long time, thinking about justice and revenge, about healing and purpose, about the difference between moving on and moving forward. He would never forgive Brielle and Lenore. He would never forgive anyone who hurt children for their own selfish gain. But he could build something from the ashes of his son's death. He could make sure Dennis's life meant something more than just a tragic story. As he got ready for bed, Adam looked up at the framed photograph of Dennis that sat on his nightstand. His son was laughing in the picture, paint smudged on his cheek, holding up a rainbow he'd drawn in art class. "I wasn't born to forgive," Adam said quietly to the photograph. "I was born to remember and to make damn sure no one forgets." The foundation would grow. More children would be saved. Dennis's legacy would live on in every life protected, every emergency prevented, every family spared. The nightmare Adam had lived through it wasn't enough. It would never be enough to balance the scales, but it was something, and for now, something was enough.